I gave birth. Hurry to the hospital. There were several missed calls on the phone my husband had forgotten, so reluctantly I answered. A woman's voice suddenly said that. I was lost for words and remained silent. Shortly after, my husband returned home to get the phone. When our eyes met, his face changed color and he froze. Seeing his reaction, I was convinced that he had fathered a child with his mistress. And then, I silently handed him the phone that was still connected. My name is Betty Johnson. I am a 28-year-old office worker. My husband Maurice, who is 2 years older than me, works at a bank. Though his career is going well, we had a concern. That is, despite being married for nearly 3 years, we haven't been able to have children yet. Being a dual-income couple, there was limited time to spend together and it seemed common to have difficulties conceiving. Given our ages, I was starting to feel the pressure. So, we decided to have a conversation about trying to conceive. I've been thinking about wanting to have kids soon. What about you, Maurice? Yeah, I guess. I'm getting older too, and I do want children. I'm considering consulting at a gynecologist's office. I really want to plan out our efforts to conceive properly. Well, I don't think we need to rush it just yet. I still cherish our time together, just the two of us. I know I'm not rushing, but there's the matter of age on the woman's side. You're right about that. We should be prepared for you to get pregnant at any time. Maurice shared that he felt there was no need to rush the pregnancy, but he wanted to have a stable living environment ready for when we do have a child. We were living in Morris's company-provided housing, but it was far from my workplace, making the commute inconvenient. Moreover, it was a 4-story building with no elevator, so we, residing on the 3rd floor, had to use the stairs. If I were to get pregnant, the commute would become considerably inconvenient, and using the stairs with a baby post-delivery might be quite a challenge. Maurice worried about this and was thinking about moving before I got pregnant. Sharing Morris's foresight, I agreed to search for a home in a more child-friendly environment. Fortunately, my parents, who manage apartments, recommended a property near a convenient station for my commute. We visited the place and were completely taken with it. This is a nice place. It's near the station, which would make your commute much easier, Betty. Yeah, but it's going to be far from your workplace, is that all right? It's fine since I commute by car. It comes with a parking spot, so it might actually be more convenient. To facilitate the purchase of the apartment, my parents agreed to front the money, and we would make monthly payments to buy it from them, reducing our financial burden. Moving into the new apartment, which had an elevator and was within walking distance to the station and supermarket, we found ourselves satisfied with our comfortable life. As we got used to our life in the new place, I decided to undergo tests at the gynecologist's office as a part of our efforts to conceive, and discussed this with Maurice. He wasn't too keen on the idea, but sensing that men might be hesitant at first, I decided to patiently wait for him to agree. You know, by testing, I don't mean starting infertility treatments right away. We're just getting checked to see if there are any issues making it difficult to conceive. I understand, but I feel it's a bit early. Maybe we can consider it a little later? I mentioned before, there's the age factor for women. If we keep postponing it, it might become even more difficult to conceive. But what about your job? You enjoy the fulfilling work you're doing, right? That's not a problem. My workplace is understanding of such situations and would excuse me from things like business trips during this time. All right, give me a little more time to think about it, okay? Yes, of course. Take your time to think about it. I didn't intend to rush Maurice, but it seemed that he felt pressured nonetheless, and he started coming home late more frequently, citing work meetings and socializing with colleagues as reasons. Naturally, the time we spent together as a couple decreased, and I felt down, thinking that moving to the new apartment for the sake of starting a family seemed meaningless now. However, after a while, Maurice suddenly agreed to undergo testing at the gynecologist's office. I'll get tested too. Well, I am confident that I am healthy, but if it gives you peace of mind, it's fine. What changed your mind all of a sudden? What's with the attitude? I finally agreed to join you in this, and you're acting like this. I am cooperating with your efforts to conceive, aren't you happy? Of course I am happy. Thank you for cooperating. Although his somewhat patronizing attitude bothered me, I decided to go ahead and book the testing appointment at the gynecologist's office, appreciating that Maurice was finally on board. The following month, after completing the tests at the gynecologist's office, we were awaiting our next appointment to discuss the results. Contrary to my nervousness about the outcome, Maurice seemed quite confident and even attempted to comfort me during the wait. Well, don't get down no matter what the outcome is. Just accept it as fate. Don't say things like that. It just makes me worry even more. I wondered where my husband's confidence, who believed there were no infertility issues on his end, was coming from. A few days later, despite it being a weekend, my husband had to hastily prepare to go to work due to a call from his boss. I asked him, "Is there such a thing as working on weekends at the bank?" The loan officer is holding a home loan seminar, but it seems they are short-staffed. It's an important job for the bank, you know. Saying so, he quickly finished his shower and hurriedly left. A few minutes after seeing him off, I heard his phone ringing from the bathroom. He has a habit of keeping his smartphone within reach even when he is showering, so it seems he forgot it there. I picked up his phone and saw the caller ID. The display name was Stella Trading Company. It seemed work-related, but I hesitated to answer on his behalf. As I was contemplating, the call ended. However, because it kept ringing repeatedly, I thought it might be important, and decided to apologize for my husband who had forgotten his phone, and answered the call. Before I could say hello, the person on the other end started talking. "I gave birth. Come to the hospital quickly." Caught off guard by the sudden voice of a woman from the other end, I was lost for words. Right then, the front door opened with a loud bang, and my husband rushed back into the house. Seeing me with his phone, his face changed color and he froze. At that moment when our eyes met, I understood everything. This person from Stella Trading Company must be my husband's mistress. And she was reporting the birth of their child. I turned on the speaker on the smartphone. The woman continued to say, "I worked hard to give birth to your child. You must be happy. Please give me a lot of rewards. I silently handed the smartphone to my frozen husband. With trembling hands, he took it and started talking in a strained voice. Hello. Regarding that matter. Huh? Hey, it's me. Stella. Yes. Huh? Is someone there with you? Don't tell me your wife is there? Since I gave birth to the baby, you should divorce her now. You said you don't need a defective wife, didn't you? No, well, so. My husband seemed to be quite flustered, forgetting to turn off the speaker on his phone, and continued to talk to the woman named Stella, while sweating profusely. Come to the hospital quickly. You have to take care of me from now on, and quickly discard your defective wife. After ending the call with his mistress, my husband stood there, head bowed, holding the phone. I said to my husband, "Is the call from your important person over?" You should go to her. There's a valid reason for this. You'll understand if I explain. What do you want to make me understand? That you made a child with your mistress, I already know. That's because you're the reason too, it's not just my fault. I'm the reason? What do you mean? Because you're infertile and yet you desire a child. That's why I had a child with someone else. I don't want to hear such ridiculous excuses now. Just leave this place quickly. And don't ever come back, okay? What? This is my house. Don't say whatever you want. I couldn't stand to talk with my self-centered husband anymore and returned to my room. Soon, I heard the sound of my husband leaving, and afterwards, I was left alone, crying until my eyes swelled up. The next day, I had the day off from work, but I couldn't muster the strength to get up in the morning, feeling lethargic and weighed down. My husband, in the end, didn't come home that night. I couldn't help but think he must be spending time with his mistress and their child, and tears started to well up again. At that moment, the ringtone of the phone echoed loudly. Somehow managing to open my heavy eyelids, I picked up the call. It was from the OB/GYN where I had undergone fertility testing. Oh yes, I remembered that today was the day to hear the results of the test. I informed them I would be a bit late and headed out. At this point, it seemed like our fertility tests as a couple didn't matter anymore, but I reluctantly went to the appointment to avoid missing it entirely. However, the results of the test were something unthinkable, and I ended up returning home, my mind swirling in confusion. That day, I contacted my parents, explained the situation, and asked for their help. I decided to move out of this condo unit by the end of the day. I couldn't stand to stay in a house where I had lived with a husband who called me defective, not even for a moment longer. With my parents' connections, I arranged for movers and junk removal services. After moving out all the belongings, I took a last look at the empty room and murmured to myself, "This is just the beginning. I will show him." The next day, I received an angry call from my husband. Because the house was locked, and there was a for sale sign posted. Hey! What's going on here? I can't get into the house. I've disposed of that place. You don't have a home to return to anymore. What do you mean, disposed of? That's my house too. This is not acceptable. Not acceptable, you say? I would like to return those words to you exactly as they are. When I informed him that I had forwarded his belongings to his parents' house cash on delivery, he seemed at a loss for words. Since his parents live in the same city, I explained that the belongings should arrive shortly, and he hastily hung up the phone. Soon after, a call came in from his parents asking for an explanation about the belongings. I told them about my husband's affair, but they seemed unable to believe me right away. They were considerably shaken and said they would also hear the story from their son before hanging up. Presumably, my husband would have to visit his parents to collect his belongings and be forced to explain the situation. I had sold most of the things we bought during our marriage to a junk removal service, so I only had a suitcase worth of belongings. I decided to stay at a nearby business hotel while commuting to work and figuring out the next steps. Later, the divorce negotiations began. Under the supervision of our respective lawyers, my husband and I engaged in discussions. My husband insisted that my infertility was the reason for his affair, asserting that I was uncooperative even though he wanted children. He said this had led to the breakdown of our marriage and that he had an affair. Now that he had a child with his mistress, he asked me to step aside for the sake of the child. I explained that I was not aware of any marital breakdown and, in fact, was actively engaged in trying to conceive. I asserted that it was my husband who had betrayed me. His lawyer pointed out that I was blaming my husband while ignoring my infertility and that I had wrongfully disposed of the house where the woman and her newborn would return. At that point, I revealed the results of the tests from the OB/GYN as evidence of our efforts to conceive. The results showed that there was nothing wrong with me, but there were issues with my husband's reproductive abilities. Seeing this, my husband was astonished. No, that's a lie. Because I have a child with Stella, it must be my wife who's infertile, right? It seems you were eager for the test because your mistress got pregnant, right? Well, it worked out, didn't it? You ended up having a child. No way. Stella, that woman, couldn't have. My husband apparently was confident in the results, presuming that I was the one who was infertile since he had conceived a child with his mistress. However, upon seeing the actual test results, he began to doubt whether the child with his mistress was really his. At this point, his lawyer asked him for an explanation, saying the story was different, and my husband was caught off guard, appearing flustered. Moreover, concerning the condo, I explained that it's registered under my parents' names, therefore, there's no illegality in disposing of it, and presented the land registry. It seems that my husband had lied about owning the house, and his lawyer wanted to go back to square one, postponing the discussions. My attorney informed me that it was not necessary for us to sit down for negotiations anymore and asked me to leave it up to them. I agreed to do so. Later, the divorce was finalized, and I made my ex-husband pay me a lump sum of $40,000 as compensation, and $20,000 to the other woman. According to my lawyer, my ex-husband initially moved back to his parents' home and then back to the company housing, where the mistress turned up with a baby. She used to work as a temporary staff member at my husband's bank, and that's when they started their affair. My ex-husband doubted if the child was his and attempted to check the child's blood type, but the mistress threw a tantrum and refused, forcing him to acknowledge the child ambiguously. Furthermore, the corporate housing was disturbed by the late-night arguments and shouting matches between my ex and the mistress. This reached the ears of the higher-ups at the bank, his workplace, and when called in for clarification, the reasons for the divorce and the extramarital child were revealed. In the conservative banking circle, it seems my ex's prospects of promotion have become dismal, and he spends his days doing simple tasks near the window. The mistress, on the other hand, has been causing troubles one after another, forcing childcare onto other wives in the company housing and borrowing money, causing such a ruckus that she's been sued and even approached my lawyer for consultation. I haven't had a chance to hear further updates from my lawyer, but it seems like they are facing the consequences of their actions. As for me, I reported my divorce at work and was in the process of looking for a rental apartment suitable for a single person when I was asked to consider a position abroad. In fact, they had wanted to offer me a position abroad for a while, but held back knowing I was trying to conceive. I accepted the offer without hesitation, ready to take on a new challenge. Although my marriage ended unhappily, my life still continues. I decided not to be discouraged and to keep moving forward.